Hello everyone, this is Jasmina, and in this video I'm going to talk about odd-shaped buildings. Now, trying to apply Feng Shui properly to odd-shaped buildings often is rather daunting for the novice. This does require some understanding and also some, most of the time, examples of buildings that can help you understand what to look for. And that's what I'm going to do here. Now, the key thing that we need to do is determine the pertinent exterior walls that define the outside of the house so that you can find the center point of the house. And this also applies to apartments or condos. So we'd be talking about the unit there. Now, only the living areas of the house are included. Garages, even if they share the same roof, are not included as protrusions because you don't live there, unless you have converted it to living space, that is. Also, covered patios, whether or not they share the same roof, are not included unless they have glass walls enclosing them. Screen walls do not count. And so I think you get the idea. It has to be someplace where you could heat and cool reasonably efficiently, let's say. That's kind of what you include. Now, protrusions of more than 1/3 of either dimension of either side will typically be included in the outline that defines the center point location. And that might not be very clear, but in the examples I'm going to show you, I think it will become clearer. Now, oddly shaped buildings often have weakened or missing sectors, and that's kind of one of their downsides. But sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. It depends on the details. In general, missing sectors either weaken or destroy the 4 best special formations. And that is a real bummer, actually. If you are missing a sector, your combo 10 would be destroyed. If you have a pearl, parent string, or 7-star robbery, if you have a missing sector, they're weakened. And that is, if there's more than 1/3 of the sector missing, it's considered weakened. So that's the definition. Now, if you don't happen to have any special formations that can be activated, perhaps you don't have the right landforms, then a missing sector may either weaken or remove a highly negative part of the house. So this may actually be good. So it depends on the details, and you actually have to do a full analysis to know whether or not it's good. So this can be rather complicated. Now, each room takes only one sector's properties. That is, it'll only have one set of flying stars, one set of purple white stars, and one set of Chi-Men properties. So, and it's basically based on the area that is the maximum. So, especially when you're using the pie chart, sometimes you'll have a room that has 2 different areas or 2 different sectors in that room. But whichever area has a larger one, so if it's between, let's say, northeast and east, if there's a tiny bit of east and the vast majority is northeast, the whole room is northeast, and it'll take up whatever properties are in that northeast sector. So that's usually the way that it's done. Now, there are times when the room is either half or very, very close to half divided, that each area is nearly the same. In that case, it really is only important if it's an important room. That's one thing. But the kitchens, if it's a kitchen that's more or less equally divided, and it has to be really close to being equally divided, it's the range or the cooktop location that will fix which sector you're going to use. If it's a bedroom, it's the headboard location. And if it's a home office, it's the desk location. Now, of course, it's pretty hard to change your cooktop unless you were planning to redo your whole kitchen anyway. But the bed and the desk is a lot easier to move around. So sometimes you may want to do that. But again, you have to have a room close to being evenly divided. Now, sometimes when you do this, and you'll see this here, there'll be portions of a room that extend beyond that outline that we create for the entire building. They will have the same properties as the adjacent room. Even if there's a wall between the two, it's whatever's the adjacent room properties will also have that in that separate little area. Now, when we go through this, I think you'll have a clearer understanding why many practitioners prefer to have a largely rectangular or square house or apartment with an activated special formation, because it makes life a lot easier. And if you can take advantage of all that special energy, it tends to make your life smoother moving forward too. Now, houses and apartments can still be interesting looking. That is, they don't have to be just rectangular or just square. They could have a little bit of, they can have it just a bit bumped in and out, and it's fine. It doesn't, as long as you don't create a missing sector or a severely weakened sector, you're usually okay. And absolute perfection is not absolutely necessary. That's something that I think is good to know. You don't have to get super worried about down to the last fraction of an inch or the last millimeter. That is too precise. But there are times when it's kind of borderline and you might want to try a couple different ones. Most of the time, you're going to have very similar ones as long as the two different outlines aren't hugely different compared to the area of the house. And I'm actually going to show you an example of this so you can see what I mean. Now, when you're using sectors or subsectors of your house for activations or to place certain objects like your bed or desk or your range, then what you want to do is aim to place it or sit yourself in the center of that sector or subsector. Because if you do it in the center, you're usually going to get it even if you're a little bit off. So, don't put yourself on the edge of the sector, because then you could be in the wrong place. And this is a good way to reassure yourself you're doing it properly and you're going to get the benefits of doing something or having an object in a certain location. So here is an actual floor plan from someone who was having a great amount of difficulty trying to do this themselves. Now, this is not a terrible house in terms of being able to figure out, but it is, it has obviously the potential to have some pretty significant missing sectors. So the rule is, I talk about 1/3, of either dimension. That is a good rule to start, but the actual rule is 1/3 the area present. So it's pretty easy to use this rule as long as you have basically a rectangular house. And this is more or less rectangular because it's when you have a lot of different angles is when you get into a lot of trouble, when things become a lot more difficult to clearly define. And you will see that too later in this video. Now, I think it's pretty clear that, of course, the left and right walls will be here and here. I think nobody would debate that. The question is, where do we go from front to back? And this is the main door, so front of the house, it's facing towards the upward direction in this image. Now we can see that this area plus this area is definitely more than a third. The question is this area? And so this area here and this area here are the questions. Do we include those? So the easiest way to do this is just pick one of the directions and start drawing lines. And I'm picking the side to side because that's where the real problem lies. And so I just measured this distance and divide it by thirds. And you can do this on a floor plan. And if you are in the United States and using the ridiculous imperial system, I would suggest you also use a ruler that actually has the metric numbers on it too, because it's a lot easier to divide by 3 in the metric system than it is to divide by 3 in the imperial system. You'll come up with, like 23/24. I mean, who knows what that is? I mean, I do, but I do it in a computer, so it's pretty easy for me. But it's a lot easier in the metric system. And you can see that this area is certainly more than a third. All by itself, it's more than a third. So is this area. So now we know that the bottom of this has to be here because this is more than a third of the side to side. So this has to be included. Now the question becomes this area. Does this need to be included? So if we try to include it, and so we would draw lines here. Now this is just a test, and you can do it this way. You want to test this out. You want to see really one of these two things. Is this more than a third? Well, obviously it's not. I mean, you don't even have to do this to know that. But the real question is this more than a third? Because this is bumped out from this wall. So is this area more than 1/3? Well, obviously it isn't because your third line is right here. So that extra little bit is not included. So this is the true outline. Now you can see that these sectors are missing. And this one might even be missing. I mean, I would say it isn't just by looking at it, but that's because I'm fairly experienced. The way you want to check this is by subdividing this one sector into this 9 equal size subsectors. So that's what I've done here. So you can see that this is over 1/3 of this entire area. It's not half, but it's over 1/3. So this is not a missing sector. This is, however, a rather weakened sector. It's whatever properties it has will be less than half as strong as they could be. Now, if this is a bad sector, then it's not so bad. You've weakened that quite a bit. But if this is a good sector, you've also weakened it quite a bit. So that is a bit unfortunate. Now, of course, exactly what happens depends on what stars you have. I don't even know the period of this house, so I'm not going to put any of the details here. I'm just explaining how you go about finding the center. So now we know this is the actual outline we need to use, and we just draw from corner to corner where they cross. That is the center. Now, once you've got the center point, you determine where the true north is. This house is about 6.5 degrees. That's the number, and I'm assuming this has been all corrected. I mean, I'm not doing an analysis on this house. I'm just helping this person determine their general thing. So I'm assuming they have properly defined their facing direction. And so it's not based on the compass, it's based on satellite and the correction from UTM to true north. I'm assuming that. But that means north is just a little bit to the west of up, because up is the facing direction here. And so that between, if you were to do a line straight up, which there's no line here that's that way, and then just do that angle, it would be 6.5 degrees, roughly. I mean, it's not quite that much, but close. And then we just add the 24 mountain chart. Now, this room here, I'm not even sure what room this is, but whatever it is, it's an east room. This is a kitchen. This is northeast. This is all open, according to what I've heard. And so I would still divide this roughly into 3 equal areas. And this is northwest, west, and southwest. The south is definitely missing. Now this might be a staircase. I really don't know. But this, if it is, and since there is no wall anywhere here, this is still part of the center because it doesn't, there's no wall to define this very well, so it becomes part of the center. The main door is in the north, and this area, I mean, hallways, they're not important. And if you've got your home office somewhere here, that can be important. Of course, this could be a home office. It would be east, even if you had your desk here, which is in the southeast. It would still be east because way over half of this room is in the east. So whatever properties the east sector has, that room has. Now you could also, if you like this better, you could do it this way. And this is why I say this is part of the center, because it's really, there's a wall right here. So this becomes east, this becomes part of the center. But if there were a wall here, or even here, then I would say it also becomes east. It might become southeast. That would be a little harder, and I would have to really check very carefully. And I can do it much better on my computer than I can on a drawing like this. So still here, we know that these are missing sectors. It's really, really clear here. And so remember when I said you don't have to be totally perfect. Let's say you didn't somehow draw your thirds properly and you thought this was also a third, so this is what you drew. Now this is not correct, but what implications does this have? Well, a couple things change. Here, south and southeast are missing sectors. North is weakened, but here, the north and the south are missing because there's so little of it left. And so that changes it. And here, I mean, we have a bigger sector. If there were to be a wall here somewhere, I would give this room the southeast. Here, if this, again, were a wall here, I'd probably still give it the east. So, it depends on the details, and I don't really have all the details of this house. Now, the key here is, even though we have slightly different drawings, for many purposes, such as using your nobleman sector or placing your range in a non-animal sign, which those are important things, you have enough leeway, even if you make a mistake, that small errors don't make that much of a difference. So now we know this one is correct, and we want to place your range in a non-animal sign sector because then the Grand Duke doesn't affect it, and a lot of things don't affect it. Also the 3 killings, it's really good if you can do that. So this area here in green, in the correct one, is a place where you could place your range. Now you're unlikely to place it in the corner. It's just not very practical, so it would probably be here. Now you could also do it here, along this left wall in the kitchen. This is a little bit more picky because it's closer to the center, so this distance is smaller. This is a lot larger. Over here, what I've done is I've shown you the area where where this sector and this sector overlap. So if you were to put your range roughly here, you'd be good. You could also place it more or less right where these two walls meet. Very close to that would also work. This is a lot more picky though. This, this you would have to be very precise. Now, um, there's also, if you were placing yourself in a place to, let's say, use your nobleman sector, and let's just say it was your nobleman sector is the dog. Well, the dog is in the northwest one, which is here. If you just measure roughly to the center of it, regardless which way you've done it, you're going to be in the proper sector. So as long as you're close to the center, you're usually okay, and you don't have a lot of trouble. It's a little bit harder, like I say, in the kitchen if you were having your cooktop here, because it's a lot more picky. Now, as drawn, both of these have the main door in the north one sector. Here it's kind of close. Here it's pretty clear. But this one is the correct one. Now, I don't happen to have the actual measurement between that corner and the edge of the door. That would be useful to be very certain about this. But for this particular house, it's not a big deal. Now, the house, whether this door is here or here, doesn't make any difference. The house will still have the same flying star chart because that's based on the house facing. It will have the same purple-white chart because the purple-white chart just cares about the big 45-degree sector that the door is located in. And it will even have the same Chi-Men chart, and that's because North 1, 2, and 3, plus I believe Northwest 1, or I'm sorry, Northwest 3, will have the same Chi-Men chart. And the same thing is true with the South. There will be 3 adjacent sectors, and I think it'll be the Southeast 3. I could be wrong. This is just from memory. But every other direction, it depends whether or not you're between 1 and 2. So in this case, it's not a big deal, but I do want to warn you, it can be important. So this measurement, there are some measurements that really need accuracy, and really you need to get this right. Of course, it depends on, I mean, for example, if you had the wall here, if this wall here was moved out to here, well, this would be, your door would be then in North 2, and it would be in North 2 here also. It would be easier to see. Because you're farther away, you have a lot more leeway in where to move it. So the closer objects are to the center of your house, the more accurate you have to be in the measurements. I think that should be clear. So now that kind of concludes that one. I'm now going to go on to some maybe not terribly common, but let's say some more buildings that you may see and you may have. One of them is an L-shaped building. This is actually pretty common, especially in the last, I don't know how many years, but it depends, you know, like at least 50 years, I would say. They started doing this kind of design. And I mean, this, of course, is way over half, so you have to have this whole distance taken. This is way over half, so this whole distance, so that defines these two edges, and then you have to square it up. So that means your center sector is usually missing, and you've got 3 sectors also missing. Feng Shui practitioners typically don't like to live in these kind of houses because you typically do not have 3 adjacent sectors that are all bad. Maybe there are some that are, but this is usually not a particularly good house to be in. You miss a lot of good energy. And if this house had the possibility of having a special formation, you really weaken it or even destroy it in a house like this. So I've never lived in a house like that, but that's because these usually are very expensive houses. Now this is an apartment. It is actually pretty easy to determine its outline. The only question would be, is this the line or is this the line on the left-hand side? Well, this is definitely over a third. So this becomes the left-hand side. And then it's, of course, this bottom is full. And so then you just square it off. And of course, this does have missing sectors too. I don't have a directional arrow on here because this is just, these plans are just taken from just random images online, and I modify them. They're not exactly like this, but they're kind of similar. But I have modified them because I don't need to be as complicated as they are. So this means that whatever's out here will be missing a lot. But here's the center. You're going to have some of it. I mean, there probably is a true missing sector here in this area, because this I don't think will be 1/3, but it's going to be close. This would be something you'd have to really look at, whether or not there's a truly missing sector. But it's certainly weakened if it's not missing. And the hard thing about this unit is to define its facing direction. Now, the building itself has its own facing direction. This is an apartment within a building. So the question then becomes, what is this unit facing? Well, most units, if they have a balcony, you'll use the balcony door. Now, although this wall is curved and it's actually full of windows and doors to the balcony, those are actually not curved. They are, flat portions of windows. I didn't put them in because that's too much fuss, but there'll be a door here and a door here. Now, we don't use this one because this is really only the bedroom for the owners or the parents, or whoever's renting it. You don't have, the public, basically, everybody doesn't have access to this. So we don't use this one. So the standard way would be to use this one. And that is, a door will be placed here, usually pretty much in the center, and it will be perpendicular to, or actually it'll be kind of in tangent somewhere in here. And so this is the perpendicular facing direction. But depending on what's outside here, if there's another building here, but over here you can see a long distance and maybe you see a lake, well then this could be the facing direction. So if I were analyzing this, I would have to have a lot of photographs to know which direction this place faces. So, and the other downside of this is you've got the kitchen basically in the center of the house. That's not typically great. But if you don't cook very often, it's not terribly bad. This one is also kind of a painful one to do, but you can, here, instead of bothering to do all the where's my line, all this kind of stuff, I usually do it just by measurements. Now, I know that this distance here is more than 1/3 of this distance. This is 39 feet. This is, and 39 divided by 3 is 13. So this is significantly over 13. Now, if this wall were to be somehow squared off, I would have included this in in the outline. But since it's at an angle and we're really talking about 1/3 the area, then this isn't big enough anymore. So it would be divided in half, because this is you do a rectangle and that triangle is, each triangle is 1/2. I hoping that people can see that. So this isn't really 1/3. It's definitely less than 1/3. So then the question becomes, is this distance, this is definitely going to be included because this is at least half. So this distance is definitely going to be included, but is it going to be this total distance here? Well, if we take this short distance and divide it by 3, that's a little over 17 feet. But if we add these 2 extra ones, that's only 16 feet, 10 inches. That's not enough. These 2 edges, these 2 little triangles here, aren't included. And so this becomes the outline. And then you just do your X, you find your north, then put the 24 mountains in, the same steps again. I don't have a direction here, I have no idea. Now I'm not even sure which direction this house faces either. Again, this one actually tends to depend on what's out there. If there are houses around it and there's a road out here, well then upwards here is the facing direction. If you've got a lake here instead, I would say down is the facing direction in this image. And of course it'll have a real direction. I just don't have a north arrow to go by. Now, there is one not so great thing about this. This area is actually full of windows and there's some doors also. So I didn't put them all in because it was a little hard to just slap them in and get them in the right place. But you do have an issue if this is all windows and here's your door. If this is where the energy is coming in, it's going to go straight through the house and won't enter these the rest of the house. It'll just shoot right through. Now, as long as you have some furniture here that blocks this direct path, you'll be okay. But if there is a door here, that's not so great. It'd be better to have a door over here rather than in line with this door. Windows aren't as bad as doors, but they still can allow energy to go straight through. So you have to be a little careful with that. This house, I would groan if I was given this house. This one is, let's just say, it definitely was not based on good feng shui. First off, you've got these 2 big double doors lined right up. Again, feng shui, the qi will just zip run right on through. It doesn't matter if this is the facing direction upwards or downwards. Probably do have a road here and you have a driveway that curves into the garage. This is a 3-car garage, so the doors have to be over here. So, this right here is a problem. Again, you could put some furniture here to block the direct thing. I'm sure the reason they did this is they wanted people to come in and see the beautiful view in the backyard. But this is not, this isn't considered good feng shui. And the thing is, people are busy taking off their coats, doing whatever. They might not notice it anyway. So I wouldn't do this for myself. I prefer them to, get a little comfortable, then walk into the living room and say, oh, wow, this is a, beautiful view. I think you get a bigger impact when you do that rather than to do it when they're first come in and they're hugging you and whatever. I mean, they're not even looking. So I think this is a waste. Now, this is the standard way we would do this. Because now, the reason why this isn't included is because this is less than 1/3 this distance. And it is also, this extra bump out is less than 1/3 of this distance. But this distance here is definitely at over 1/3. It's almost 2/3. So this is why this wall here and this wall here become the other walls. Now this is pretty simple. These 2 are kind of more obvious. This is the standard way to do it, and you are lining up your outline with the walls. That is tremendously more easy to do than trying to do another way, which I can't say isn't totally illegitimate, but I wouldn't do it this way because it's very, very hard. You could try to do it this way. But remember, we're talking about the 1/3 area. So you have to make sure, and I'm pretty sure that this is too far over. I think it probably belongs more like here. But you have to make sure that if you divide this by 3 that this area is, well, whichever, I mean, this area, it's hard to do. This area here would be over 1/3 of it is inside the house. I mean, you've got missing here, you've got an extra here, but you've got missing here. I mean, this gets really difficult to do. And if an owner insisted I were to do it this way, I would charge them a whole lot more money, because this, I can do this quite accurately inside the computer, but this would take me 5 times or more long to do than to do it the standard way. And also this house needs a lot other stuff too. I mean, just this here, this is an unfortunate thing, but this is pretty easy to fix. And so I would hope I don't get a house like this to do, because I would be debating whether or not I should do it this way, because you have a lot less missing areas, a lot less missing sectors if you do it like this. But this is not the standard way to do it. This one also, I hope I never get, because this is going to be even harder to do because you've got curves. So this really gets picky. This line probably should be a little more like here. But in a big place like this, this difference isn't going to make a huge difference. Now, this is obviously an apartment building in a large, high-rise apartment. The elevators and emergency stairs and janitorial on each floor are located in the center, and there's probably another, this is probably a symmetrical building, and there's another apartment down here, out here on this side, maybe even 2. I mean, there's probably room for 2, but they'll be much smaller, of course. Now, this is meant for a very rich family because they have staff quarters. So they have live-in staff. So these people are well off. And also, if you have a place this big in a big city, you're rich. So, but this is how I would do it, and I may fiddle a bit with this, but this I would also have to take a very long time to do. I would not request a standard charge for this, because this is quite painful. This is a lot of work. Just to get this done properly is a lot of work. Once that's done, the task becomes a lot easier. There's still a lot of analysis to do, but this is, on a strangely shaped building, much harder to do. Now, also, I don't know what direction this unit faces. I could probably tell you which direction the whole apartment building faces if I had the ground floor plan, but I can't really tell you what directions these faces. It's going to be probably somewhere in here, but it all depends on what's going on outside. If there's another building here, it may actually face, like this direction where they can actually see. And it could even face from one of the bedrooms. That would be a little weird, but it depends on what's outside. If there's a busy road here, well, then this is the facing direction. If it's here, this is. If it's here, busy road, then this would be. But they have to basically see the road. If there are buildings blocking it all the way around, it becomes a lot more difficult. And I would say it depends mostly on where the family spends most of its time. It would probably be somewhere in this area, but it's really hard to say. It would require a lot of analysis to be able to do this place properly. So I hope you've gained something, and I hope you don't live in one of these horrible places, because they're very hard to do. I'm hoping you live in a more or less a house that has 90-degree angles. Then it's a lot easier for you to be able to figure this out on your own. But if you have questions, you can email me here, or maybe leave a comment, but it's hard to leave a comment and have any meaningful thing in this case. But again, if you subscribe, I'll be having new videos on a regular basis. Thank you again for watching.